All right, so part of this discussion related to science brought to mind the question, what is science? A couple of things that were mentioned before was science, true science, what the Bible says about it. How do we reconcile those? What is science?
I think if we want to talk about true science and what science is, we have to define, I guess, make a difference between science, true science, and theory. And I think if we look at evolution, they like to take that word theory out of it and say, well, evolution from a single-celled organism to man today, and that they preach it as fact. You know, even though it is a theory, they don't like to say it's a theory. But I think true science is something observable, something that we can test. It's tangible. We can test it, we can see it, and we can prove it. And when we get into theory, that's based on assumptions. That's based on things we don't know about. Things about when the earth began. We weren't there. We don't know. So we have to know and understand it's a theory. And it's not observable, true science. So I think it's good to make a distinction between the two: science, true science, observable science, and maybe scientific theory, ideas, assumptions.
I had a professor in college in a science class, and loved, very sweet lady, but she spent a lot of time in the class talking about how a hypothesis is developed and the hypothesis is tested, and actually then is turned into some sort of a theory that then again is, over a period of time, there's an attempt to test those things. But if something can be tested, it becomes a law, and we think of things like the law of gravity, and there are other laws as well. But the question came up in the classroom that day, well, what about the theory of evolution? And her answer to that was, well, it's been a theory long enough that people understand it's a law. I mean, even though it's called a theory, it's a law. It's not a law, it's a theory. And there's a difference between a law and a theory. So I'm concerned about the fact that we just throw these things out there, especially to our young people in these classrooms. We just throw out a bomb that says, well, the theory of evolution's been proven long enough, it's a law, with no evidence to back that up. But 100 kids walk out of that classroom and go, well, it's not the theory of evolution anymore, it's a law of evolution. And it's not. And I just think if we're really searching for truth, that truth ought to come from both sides of that argument. The folks that don't believe God is behind it, if you're really searching for truth, then at least be honest enough in the argument, or be, that you're discussing that in a way that is fair and just to the argument. I want to do that. I'm not claiming I always am. In all seriousness, I might make a mistake along the way, and I have a bias coming into something, but I want to. My goal is to be fair to the argument on my side of an argument, that I'm objectively analyzing it, because I want to know science. I want to know what true science is, and I want to know what the truth is at the end of that, because outside of that, we've got nothing. We're just studying stuff and telling people what to think instead of how to think.
Well, even the science community requires the idea of objectivity. That I let the evidence, I let what it is we're examining, what it is we're testing, let the results of that bring forth a conclusion. And so when we think about, the idea of a theory being presented, I can't come in with the assumption that that theory is law. And no objective scientist who's looking for truth and honest results of their hypothesis is going to have that type of mindset. So even if we're talking the Bible, if we're talking the theory of evolution, we have to be objective, we have to be honest, and we have to be able to sit there and say, after we test this theory, what are the results of that? And what is it that we can observe? And then if we can observe and verify and go through the scientific method, then we see that it was science.
Right.
And I recognize the fact the Bible's not a science book. It's not. And I recognize that it's faith, that I believe something. But it's faith built upon evidence. It's not just a blind faith, it's faith built upon evidence. For instance, hundreds of years before man figured it out, in Job 26, verse number 7, the Bible said, He stretcheth out the north over the empty place, and hangeth the earth upon nothing. Now I can go to man's concept of science, And throughout the annals of history, and I can find individuals that believe that there was a strong man standing on the back of an elephant that had the earth sitting on his shoulders, and that's how the earth was suspended in the heavens. Now, if you want me to believe science and modern, whatever the modern science is of the day or the modern thought is of the day, I can believe there's an elephant that's standing on a turtle which is swimming in the great sea, that's got a man standing on the back of the elephant that's then got the earth hanging upon his shoulders, and I can believe that. Or I recognize through faith he hung the earth upon nothing. And then we shoot a space shuttle up, or it wasn't the space shuttle when they first shot up into space, but they came back with pictures that were objective. They could be seen, they could be tested. And guess what the earth is hung upon? Nothing. It's hung upon it. And the Bible was correct all along. Those evidences give me faith in the inspiration of the Bible. The Bible knew it long before men figured it out. And while I'm not claiming the Bible is a science book, it's scientifically accurate.